What's up, everyone? Drew Wilson here, and I'm doing another vlog posting. Now, I spent a lot of time talking about Bill C-11, and it is now called the Online Streaming Act, and it's going to hurt a lot of digital first creators. We're not going to see the changes overnight, obviously, because it's going through the CRTC process at this point, so it's not going to cause a whole lot of harm overnight, but over the long term, there is that risk that it will do so. But the thing is that Bill C-11 isn't the only one out, only piece of legislation out there that's going to cause an abundance of pain. And there's actually a three-pronged war on the open internet right now. And the second prong is known as Bill C-18. And Bill C-18 is basically Canada's link tax legislation. And essentially it's going to harm a lot of online creators such as myself who actually have their own news website and just trying to make a living off of that. And opponents of the bill basically have been enduring a ton of attacks in this debate. And the attacks include that the supporters the supporters of the bill are basically saying that the us opponents were not news, actual quote, not news, or not real journalism, or spreading disinformation, or haters of true journalism, or it goes on. It goes on for a long time about all the personal attacks that we've been enduring for the last little while in this whole debate. And I won't necessarily go into why this is all defamation, but we'll just say that it just completely misses the point of why we are criticizing the bill in the first place. And there's a number of problems associated with this bill, but I'll highlight two of them. And the first big problem that I know of is that it basically takes choice out of, people who create the online news like ourselves. And one example I can showcase is Section 11 of the bill. Now you'll notice, there's a lot of text. I won't read this all out, but essentially the point I wanted to raise is that since I'm a news organization, or a news website, I should say, what power do I have to basically go up to the platforms and say to the government that, listen, we know what's going on with this debate, and we just don't want anything to do with it, and we would rather just stick with the status quo of, we post up our links to these platforms like Facebook and Google, and we would just like to keep these links free. Well, nowhere in this legislation, and Section 11 is a good example of that, allows us to do that. It just assumes that every news organization is the same. And yeah, so much for the diversity of voices in the world of news by the supporters of this bill. But essentially, it doesn't recognize that. It just assumes that if a news link goes on a platform, then therefore it requires payment no matter what. So yeah, it's a huge problem because it takes away our choice and our ability to operate things. And this is just the beginning of it, because it sounds like kind of not a big deal type of problem, but there's a lot of the problems that compounds this issue. And one section in question that really hurts everyone involved is Section 27, which I have right here. So Section 27 says that 27.1, at the request of a news business, the commission must by order designate the business as eligible if it A, is a qualified Canadian journalism organization as defined in subsection 248(1) of the Income Tax Act, or is licensed by the Commission under paragraph 91B of the Broadcasting Act as a campus station, community station, or native station, as those terms are defined in regulations made under the Act, or other categories of licensees established by the Commission with a similar community mandate. B, produces news content of public interest that is primarily focused on matters of general interest and reports of current events, including coverage of democratic institutions and processes, and I, regularly employs two or more journalists in Canada which journalists may include journalists who own or are a partner in the news business and journalists who do not deal at arm's length with the business. II operates in Canada, including having content edited and designed in Canada. III produces news content that is not primarily focused on a particular topic, such as industry-specific news, sports, recreation, arts, lifestyle, or entertainment, and IV is either a member of a recognized journalistic association and follows the code of ethics of a recognized journalistic association, or has its own code of ethics whose standards of professional conduct require adherence to the recognized processes and principles of the journalism profession, including fairness, independence, and rigor in reporting news and handling sources. Or C, operates an Indigenous news outlet in Canada and produces news content that includes matters of general interest, including coverage of matters relating to the rights of Indigenous peoples, including the right of self-government and treaty rights. So, yeah, these are the hoops that we would have to jump through in order to qualify as a so-called eligible news organization, in order to actually receive the payments in question that the platforms are being charged in the first place. So, it's a huge problem. Like, for instance, like one of my big questions is what counts as a particular topic. And for me in particular, like I cover digital rights, technology, privacy, and stuff that has to do with government, and a whole lot more essentially on those fronts, as well as covering like music reviews, video game reviews. You see all my postings about video games as well, and so I have a wiki that explores music in general, and in the eyes of the government, would I be disqualified from this bill under the provision of not being primarily focused on a particular topic? I honestly have no answer to that. And in fact, what I did was I emailed the CRTC with ticking off that box saying that I would like follow up on that, and just asking, would I be disqualified in this situation? And essentially, the CRTC flat out ignored me. They never responded to me. And I'm talking like about a month worth of waiting, so they're not coming back to me on that one. And so yeah, I'll post a link in the description below on that big fiasco. Now, in all of this, there are two plausible outcomes in all this, and one is that the platforms like Google and Facebook would basically pull news links out of the country. And I honestly think that is the most plausible outcome, because basically everything, all the evidence points to that this is the inevitable outcome of all this. And of course, everyone gets hurt by that. For instance, like the news outlets, like a lot of news outlets, when they start up their website, they have a strategy of how can we make ourselves visible on Google? How can we make ourselves visible on Facebook? How can we make ourselves visible on several other platforms, if that is even part of the strategy behind that? And suddenly, if those platforms pull out, well, suddenly a good portion of your traffic is basically choked off. So if you have this massive strategy on Facebook, well, that's now gone. And as a result, you'll see that traffic dries up, you'll have subscriptions suddenly vanish, and your ad revenue, it's going bye-bye in a hurry. So as a result, yeah, we're going to see a lot of news businesses go under as a result of that. And honestly, all the evidence points to this as being what's going to happen. But for the platforms, not so much. Like, it's not going to really affect them that much. At most, they might get a little bit of financial turbulence. But beyond that, chances are they're not going to be affected at all by this. Like, they're going to carry on as business as usual. So, yeah, they're gonna make off relatively unscathed in all this. But of course, the other scenario is that they actually somehow make the implausible and unlikely and basically senseless decision of just going along with this and paying for the privilege of sending news websites their traffic, which is senseless because they have no financial incentive to do so. And in that scenario, I think everyone gets hurt in the end as well. Like the the platforms, for instance, like they're going to be paying massive amounts of money for that. 300, I think 320 million was the highest one. Another 219 was another, 219 million was another one. And they're going to see that not only in the context of Canada, they're going to be paying out lots of money, but on top of that, you also have other countries that are going to be further emboldened by this. Well, if you're going to be paying news links in Canada and you're already paying news links in Australia, well, therefore, we should get similar laws too. And we're going to help our news businesses in our country. And two examples of that is the UK and the US. They're going to push this, and we're going to see like an increasing number of countries and an increasing number of liability that these platforms have to pay as well. And the small businesses like us, we get hurt by this because we put our news links on there and that money gets refunneled into all the larger players afterwards. So basically we're paying for our competitors to basically bury us on the platforms. And the medium businesses, they're not going to make out much better because the parliamentary budget officers basically admitted that, yeah, 75% of the money that is going to come from this is going to go to the biggest, most profitable players. We're talking CBC, Globe and Mail, and the smaller players, we're going to get shells. They're going to get shells of peanuts. Like that's 25%, and the math takes over. And if you're sharing 25% amongst several hundred, if not thousands of players, you're not going to get much in the end here. I think the realistic scenario I came up with was $221,222.41 per year, which honestly isn't even enough to pay a janitor part-time minimum wage job to clean out the garbage cans. It is going to be shells of peanuts for these players. And the largest players aren't going to necessarily be winning necessarily, although it's debatable whether or not they're going to be winning in all this, because I know I saw Peter Menzies' testimony on this bill, and he said that Post Media was telling lawmakers that they need an additional $500 million to survive per year, and this isn't even going to get close. And on top of that, you're going to have all these incentives programs, government programs to help keep these news businesses afloat. They're expiring, so I don't know if they're going to be money behind or if they're going to only be money slightly ahead in all this, but it's not going to be enough regardless. So, and of course, there's another risk too, is if other countries start saying that we're going to be putting these laws in place and we're going to be demanding that Google and Facebook pay this money to these to their journalism outlets, then the risk is essentially that the platforms are just going to pull out. They're just say, okay, this is ridiculous. We're paying how many hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, for something that doesn't even affect us that much. And additionally, there's that constant risk that they could just pull out of existing deals and say, we're done. So that risk of the platforms, even if they go along with that in Canada, it's always going to be there, and that risk is only going to keep increasing until we reach a breaking point at some point. So that's the big risk. Ultimately, I think everyone gets hurt by this bill, regardless of whatever scenario ends up prevailing. I know supporters have this fantasy idea that this bill is going to save journalism, but it's really not going to do anything of the sort. As for me, yeah, I probably will survive in all this. I built my website kind of to resist this sort of thing, even though I didn't intend it for this specific scenario, but that's what I've managed to put together for now. So we'll see what happens. I'll try and survive as much as I can. But yeah, hopefully you got an idea of how things are going to turn out with this, and just a general gist of the bill. Obviously, I'm not going to fit it all into a 15-minute video, so yeah. Consider subscribing, liking, subscribe to our Patreon page, and check out our website, freezenet.ca. So I guess that is all for now, and until next time, keep it cool.